Hello and welcome back to my garage. Today I'm going to be doing a valve adjustment on this S54 M Coupe. Now we've gotten a little bit of the way there. We already took off the cover and the valve cover. A friend was here last weekend with his M Coupe and he needed to borrow some hardware which we thought could come off of this, but turns out the bolts weren't the same despite two websites saying that they were, but they weren't. So anyway, since we already have it partially apart, I figured now is a good time to go ahead and do the valve adjustment. If you're following this along for like a how-to, I'm just assuming that you know how to get to this point. If you don't, there's a ton of how-to videos out there. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So just an overview of what we're doing today. It's been 30,000 miles since its last valve adjustment. So we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna replace the spark plugs. And then, well, I guess this is kind of like coinciding with this because we have to remove the spark plugs in order to do the valve adjustment easily. So then we get around to actually doing the valve adjustment itself. Now, I printed this out to measure the valve clearance. Also need these actual feeler gauges. So those are all the sizes that I need. And then I forgot these were even in here, but this was actually in my shim kit. I've always just done it by hand because I'm an old person. So that was my first valve adjustment. And then that was my last valve adjustment. And that was, yeah, 15,000 miles ago. So I still have a little bit of ways to go till I'm due again. But in the meantime, I can do his to keep me busy. Another little thing you need is a stick with a magnet. Now they sell these for pretty cheap on like your Euro website of choice. But the reason you need one with a magnet is once you move the rocker arm out of the way, you need a magnet to grab onto. You're gonna need a magnet to grab onto the shim and pull it out of the valve. Trying to do it by hand is impossible and you will almost certainly drop it into your engine. So get one of these, it's cheap. Okay, so now we can take off the valve cover and actually get started on the engine work. Well, he was pointing out that the hood has a service mode, so that way you can get a little bit more clearance with the hood. Now, somehow this gigantic fucking hood isn't in my way, but I think it's also just because I'm short. So I'm sure if someone who were like 6 foot tall was doing this, they would probably need to do that, but at a whopping 5'1", 5'2", I think I'm good, so. All right. So thankfully, we did all this kind of in a rush last weekend and removed all the wires, tucked them out of the way. And one thing I will say that's kind of BS compared to my E46 is that he has more clearance in this engine bay than I do in the car that was actually like designed to take the S54 exclusively. So this is normally just like flopping all around in my car, and his, it just tucks neatly out of the way. And same with the wires, like they all tuck behind the valve cover. It's bullshit. So this car is sitting just under 100,000 miles and looks pretty good. There's a little bit of wear on the cam lobes. Yeah, just a little bit here. A little bit of carbon buildup there. I mean, for 100,000 miles, it's not bad. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but these gaskets are pretty much toast. There's oil in all of these spark plug cylinders, and it gets worse as you go back further. Now, do you know when the last time the valve adjustment was done?
Probably then.
Okay, so it might have been like 40,000 miles since, okay.
I didn't find any receipts to specifically state valve adjustment.
Okay.
But I did find, I mean, we have books of receipts.
All right, so first thing we're gonna do is remove the spark plugs. So for those of you wondering why I'm doing the work on Brandon's car instead of Brandon, it's not that he doesn't know how at all. I've had my M3 now for 8 years. Yeah, actually it's like 8 years today, holy crap. So I've had my M3 now for 8 years and have done all of the maintenance by myself over that time frame. Except for the clutch, dude, just damn, man. Except for the clutch. But anyway, so I've done all the maintenance on my M3, and whenever I've worked on the car, he's always had the motto of not my car, and just kind of left me to it, which is fine. He's had enough projects to work on. So when he was toying around with the idea of getting an S54 M Coupe, we're like, I don't know, can we have like 2 S54s in the same house? But since he has a pocket S54 mechanic in here, he felt pretty comfortable getting it.
Also, parts redundancy.
Yeah, we have redundancy between us, so I can steal stuff off of his car if I need to, which we actually did when we were troubleshooting the Vanos. He kept getting a check engine light, so we swapped the Vanos solenoids. Oh yeah. Just a little oily.
So it doesn't rust.
Yeah, came right out. All right, so the spark plugs look pretty good. In order, we have it 1 through 6. I would say 1 and 2 look pretty much the same, and then as we go along, they get a little bit more oily, and then 6 is obviously the worst one. So that one, the seal is like all the way gone. There wasn't like a whole lot of pooling in the cylinder, but could always be worse. So I'm just gonna take off the old valve cover gasket and the little spark plug gaskets. All right, so we're gonna do the intake side first. This is the intake side. Clearance range here is 0.007 to 0.009 inches. And we're gonna start with cylinder 1 and just work our way down. So you want the cam lobe to be pointed up, and you kind of have a lot of play here, so it doesn't need to be precise because the bottom is just a circle, so you have a pretty wide range of motion rotationally. So, you know, the cam lobe could be pointed a little bit this way, a little bit that way. It doesn't have to be perfectly up, but the rule of thumb that I use is just to kind of line it up with the camshaft cap here, and we'll just do that the whole way down. And we're gonna do the intake side first. Gonna go cylinder by cylinder, measure the clearance in each one, and then do an adjustment. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing with the exhaust side. Before I do anything involving removing the shims, we're gonna plug up the oil holes here at the bottom and also all of the spark plug holes here. But for now, it can stay open. And I'm probably also just gonna scope the cylinders here just to see how the engine's doing. Okay, so we have cylinder 1 ready to measure. So I'm gonna start with the tightest measurement and work my way up. So 0.07. All right, so that goes in and out easily. In and out easily. And just working our way up to the top of the measurement line. All right, so that's 0.08, and it won't go in on either side. So the measurement that I'm going to record on this one is 0.07. That's the next size down, and it goes in and out easily. So this one is at the bottom range of adjustment, so 0.07. Sorry, 0.007, not 0.07. That would be gigantic. Okay, so let's go to cylinder 2. This little thing right here is the shim, that little teeny disc next to my fingernail. This is the rocker arm, and then this is the cam lobe. So here's the feeler gauge on this side. What I'm doing is I'm measuring the difference between the rocker arm and the cam lobe, the spacing I mean. So 0.007 goes in and out easily. So now I'm going to try 0.008. And see, that doesn't want to go in. So I'm going to record this measurement as 0.007.
While we're at it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot I wanted to scope the cylinders. Are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All 6 cylinders looked great. There was no more cross-hatching that we could see, but there was no scoring. There was a little bit of carbon buildup, but all 6 cylinders looked great, so I'm calling this a success.
The intake side was actually all good. All 6 cylinders, all 12 valves, completely within spec, so that's good news for me. So now we're going to do the exhaust side. The clearance range on the exhaust side is a little bit wider, so it's 0.011 inches to 0.013 inches. So I have 4 feeler gauges out, the 3 that are within range, and then the 0.014, which will tell me if we're getting out of range. So I'm gonna do the exact same procedure, it's just on the bottom end here. So start rotating until this cam lobe is up top. And we start from the smallest and work our way up. All right, so 1B was 0.11 inches. And 1A was 0.012 inches. All right, so now I'll move on to cylinder 2, and we'll get a close-up on this one too.
You seized my motor.
I didn't seize your motor, it's just
You seized my motor.
I'm too weak, dude. I worked out today. That's the excuse. It's the vernal equinox. There we go. All right. Time to check cylinder dose. All right, so that's 0.11, 0.011. I'll do 0.012.
Oh no. That went in, that just walked right in there.
All right, 0.013.
That, oh no.
Oh, you're in. Let's see. It's a little tight. Let's see if the next one fits.
Maybe different, flowing different rates.
All right, so that was 0.013, so that one's within spec.
Okay.
All right, so there's actually one that needs to be adjusted. This one, let's see, 3B is 0.015.
Oh.
So it's
That's
a little out, so I actually have to do a valve adjustment today. I thought I was gonna get away with just a valve measurement. So record that, and we're definitely gonna have to come back to that one. On to cylinder numero 4. It's okay, I'm a professional. So 5A is 0.012. And 5B is 0.010. Thank you, sweetheart. 2 cylinder 6. You wrote both of those down, right? Yep, okay.
I'm not just sitting here drinking beer watching you work on my car. But seriously, I'm just sitting here drinking beer watching her work on my car.
All these are within spec, and then we get to 3B, right? So that is at least 0.002 over. So once I get the shim, I'm gonna put it probably mid-range, so I'm gonna aim for, since my range is 0.011 to 0.013, I'm gonna aim for a shim that brings it down to 0.012. So really, I'm just gonna call this 0.003 over. So that way, whatever shim I get will put us in the middle of that range. All right, and then 5B is actually under by 0.001. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I want to bring it to about 0.012. So I'm gonna call this 0.002 under. So this one here is too tight, and this one here is too loose. So I plugged up the spark plug cylinders, and then there's oil passageways in the head here. I'm just gonna tuck some paper towels underneath this too, because just in case I drop one of these valve shims, I don't want to be the asshole who grenades my husband's engine. That would
That would only happen if you didn't tell me about it.
that would be real bad.
And guess what? Guess
I'd
who's
be
replacing the motor then?
yeah, I'd have to I'd be dropping an oil pan tonight. And I'm only working on like cylinder 3 and 5, but so technically this should not be in play whatsoever. I'm just nervous. So have to take off this little retain. Oh, just came right off.
Yeah, let me show. Let me show the people.
All right, so I didn't remember it coming out that easily. Let's pop this back on. God damn it. Can't see. Okay. So this little retaining spring bracket thing, just pop this off and it allows the rocker arms to slide over. So that's off. So rocker arm, this is the base of it right here, and it just slides right over.
And what that does?
So that exposes, see that little circle there on top of the valve above the spring? That little guy is a valve shim. And then this is the rocker arm. So I'm just gonna slide that back over. Let's get my finger. There we go. All right, so the rocker arm's out of the way. So now I can just put my magnet down in there, and that's going to grab my shim. And now I can measure it against my range and see which shim I need. All right, so this part is going to infuriate my European friends. So the shims are measured in millimeters, my gauges are measured in inches, so I kind of had to keep going back and forth between the two. So the existing shim that I pulled out is 2.32 millimeters, which is 0.091 inches. Now, I needed to tighten up the clearance by 0.003 inches, so I needed to go up to a 2.4 millimeter shim. So that's what I have here, and that's what we're replacing it with. So I am sticking this back on the end of the magnet. And now it's going back in the top of the valve bucket, like that little hole right there. And then you just kind of slide this out gently. There we go. So you have to do it gently, because otherwise you can hit the end of it and it'll just pop right out, and that's why I have the rags there. So now I can slide the rocker arm back into place, and I've tightened up the clearance, so I gotta probably move it a little bit by hand. There we go. All right, so rocker arm is sliding back over. Damn it. I know, I just see it. Can you shine the flashlight on it?
I'm trying. I can't figure out. There we go. I think you're fine. You just need to shimmy it over. There you go.
There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to put this back in and measure the clearance again and make sure we're good. All right, rocker arm retaining clip back into place. All right, so So the new clearance is 0.011.
And now I'm doing the adjustment on cylinder 5. And with that, there were only 2 valves that needed adjusted, and I'm done, and I can move on to installing the new spark plugs. So just torquing all those down to spec, and then I need to prep to put on the new valve cover gasket. And in order to do so, I need to remove the old RTV gasket that was put at the seams of the head. So I'm just very carefully doing that with a razor knife and making sure not to drop any inside of the head. And now I need to degrease the surface. So I'm just going around with a shop towel and spraying it with some brake parts cleaner and just making sure that all of the surfaces are both clean and dry. I apologize, but my microphone died unbeknownst to me while I was doing this. So now I get to add my voice after the fact. So I'm adding a thin bead of RTV sealant at the seams in the front. And then I'm repeating the same procedure in the back at the half moon shaped cutouts that are behind the cams. And now I can put in the new valve cover gasket. So just work your way around slowly, make sure not to drop it or press it in too hard because there is metal in there and you can bend it, and as soon as it's bent, it's compromised and you need a new one. So just be careful, make sure that it's seated properly, make sure all of the nubs on the bottom of the valve cover gasket are seated into place on top of the head. There's going to be little holes to accept all of those nubs. Once that's done and the new valve cover gasket is laying perfectly flat, then you can reinstall your valve cover and finish the reassembly. And with that, you are done.
If you like what I'm doing here and would like to see more, please subscribe to my channel. If you're embarrassed about liking it, you can hide your subscriptions from your friends in your privacy settings. Either way, the more the merrier. I'd be happy to have you. And subscribing really helps out my channel so I can put out more of these videos.